G'day from Australia. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from which I'm broadcasting. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Ashley Davis. Welcome to my coding live stream. Also, welcome to 2021. This is my first coding live stream of the year. I hope you all had a great holiday and have been keeping safe. I'm continuing to live stream the development of my Kanban board extension for Visual Studio Code. In the live streaming I did last year, I did a bunch of test-driven development to build a function that converts from Markdown files to Kanban board data and back again. The problem I have now is that my UI for my Kanban board is coded in JavaScript. So to use that TypeScript code, I'm going to have to convert it to TypeScript. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to convert this JavaScript-based React application to TypeScript. I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm doing, while I'm doing, and also why I'm doing it. So please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter and ask me questions. My Twitter handle is ashleydavis75. I'm just going to start with a quick demo of where we're headed with this, just to explain again what I'm doing. This will be very familiar to you already if you've been following my live stream. We've got a Kanban board here running in Visual Studio Code. This is a React UI application running on a library called React Trello, and it's running inside Visual Studio Code as a web view inside a Visual Studio Code extension. On the left, we've got some a Markdown file, which is a to-do list, and it's actually synced up to this Kanban board. So you can see here that if I'm dragging this around, you can see watch on the left here. You can see that that's going to change. So it's a way of editing your to-do lists in your Markdown files without leaving Visual Studio Code, and having all your to-do lists and your Kanban boards, your sort of like your Trello boards, in your Visual Studio Code repository. So last year I built this prototype. It's pretty rough and ready. There's a lot of problems with it. It was only really supposed to show me that this project was feasible, and that it wasn't going to be too hard. So with that proven, I started proper development, and that's what I was doing, TypeScript development in my sessions last year. And I'm actually going to move forward to actually getting this working properly in Visual Studio Code now. So the first step is that I need to kind of get that TypeScript code running in Visual Studio Code. Now, the code for this is all open source. You can find it on my GitHub, Ashley Davis. Let me zoom in a little bit here. So my GitHub is Ashley Davis. You can find this one at Taskboard VS Code extension. Please get in there, have a look. There's a README file here that will help you get started with the project. You can follow along with my coding if you grab this repository. And in fact, in a moment, I'm going to show you how to clone this using Git. For the moment, though, I just want to show you where the previous sessions are. So if you look on my YouTube channel, that's the Data Wrangler. If you look under playlists, and you'll find the coding live stream task board. So in there, you'll find all the previous sessions. So we're up to session 8 of my task board live stream. And what I'm working towards with this is to actually get this thing published, to get this extension published in the Visual Studio Code marketplace. That'll be the end goal for this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to clone this fresh. So I have been working on this in the past. In fact, I'll show you the code directories I've been working with. So I'm working on I'm working with Windows 10 here, but I've got all the Linux commands just in case you're wondering, because I've installed Git for Windows, which comes with a whole bunch of useful Linux commands that work under Windows. Now you can see here I've got a bunch of working directories, working 2, or the original working 3. As I've been working through this project, I've sort of been recloning it and kind of starting from scratch. Well, not starting from scratch, but starting from the last commit that I got in there. I will clean this directory up sooner or later and go back to just one working code directory. But due to the ad hoc nature of this project and how I live stream a little bit and then I come back to it later, I live stream a little bit, then I come back to it later. So I'm always dropping this project and picking it up again. So it's a little bit ad hoc. If we go back to the to the GitHub page for the project here. Now what you want to do, if you want to develop this and contribute yourself, you should first fork your own copy of it. And then what you want to do is clone it. So you can go to the clone section here under code. This gives you the link that you're going to clone. So I'm just going to copy that to the clipboard. Now I can do git clone, paste in that link that I just got. Oh, that's the HTTPS link. See how it says HTTPS there? I don't want to use that. I'm all set up for SSH authentication with SSH keys. So I have pre-authenticated access to all my GitHub stuff from the command line. How do I get that? Oh, sorry, I'm in an incognito tab here, so I might just go into a non-incognito tab and it might actually give me what I want. Oh, here it is, cool. So it says SSH here. Let me just zoom in a bit on that so you can see it. So SSH, I'm going to copy the SSH link to my repo. I'm going to clone that. So you can see here that the link I'm using will basically bring in my SSH authentication keys and authenticate me with this so I can actually... So I'm actually going to copy this to a working for directory. So I can't overwrite the previous directory that I was playing with. Now, when you want to get started with this project, obviously you need to go in and npm install. This gets all your dependencies for the Node.js project. All this is in the README, so if you look here, yeah, it's telling you what to do here, npm install. You've got to go down to the React application, which is in a subdirectory. You've got to do npm install on that. I'll do that in a second when this is finished. I'm going to give you a bit of an update as well. So in between the last live stream and this live stream session, I've done a bit more coding. I basically finished the editing code, the test-driven development for the editing of a Markdown board, and kind of copying that back to the Markdown. That was basically just a repeat of what I did last session. So I decided not to wait to do a new live stream to do that. I just did it. I got that out of the way so that I can move on. I'm going to show you that code in a moment and the tests that I've added, just in case you're catching up. Okay, now I can go down to the React app, do my npm install there. So this is the React application that is going to be rendered inside the Visual Studio Code in a web view. While that's working, I'm just going to open this up in Visual Studio Code. I'll just run code dot to open the current directory in Visual Studio Code. I'll zoom in a bit so everyone can see this, hopefully. That's still installing. So let's have a look at what I did in between live streams. So if you remember, I was working on the converter. So I'm just going to collapse some of these type definitions. So the main function that I did test-driven development for, that you would have watched me develop this function from scratch if you followed all the live streams. And just to be sure, you can catch up on YouTube if you want to watch all those previous live streams. I use test-driven development to create this function that converts a Markdown abstract syntax tree. That's like a pre-processed version of a Markdown file. It's going to convert it to board data, so Kanban board data. So that's what's returned here. So that's what that function does. There's more that this function has to do. There are features missing, but I want to kind of get an end-to-end version of this extension working that I can actually start using before I start making improvements and feature additions to this function. And when I do those improvements and feature additions, that will be done using test-driven development as well. Now, what I've done in between live streams is I've got a bunch of new functions here, basically for editing parts of the Kanban board data. And what this does, this is very important, and it's kind of tricky, kind of complicated, but very important. All these functions here that modify, will update a Kanban board, they modify it directly back into the Markdown abstract syntax tree. And that means I don't lose any data from the Markdown, which was a problem in the prototype. And I knew that if I couldn't solve this problem, this wasn't going to be a feasible project. It wasn't going to be something that was going to work, because it could easily lose user data. If it's serialized to Kanban board data, and the Kanban board data isn't as expressive as the Markdown, which it's not. When it comes back, it's going to wipe out parts of the Markdown that you would have wanted to have kept. And that is certainly true. That's certainly what's happening in the prototype, and is what I had to fix. If we have a look at the tests, I've added a whole new test suite. So there's a function here called make test data. I think I expanded that. So that's what actually takes some simplified data and builds. This actually builds a Markdown abstract syntax tree to represent a Kanban board. Now we've got this test suite here. Deserialize Markdown to board data. I think I renamed that from deserialize or something. So that's most of the tests that I wrote that you can watch now on YouTube, or that you might have watched when I was live streaming it in the past, are in this test suite. I'm just going to collapse that. There's a new test suite now, update board data to Markdown AST. So this tests that we can do things like, update a lane in the Kanban board into the Markdown AST. We can add a new lane to the Markdown AST, to do various variations of that we can remove a lane, that we can update a task name in the Kanban board, that we can update, that we can add a new task. So fairly extensive range of tests here. I don't think it covers everything. You see my little to-do list for my tests at the end here that I was working off last year. I've still got a bunch of tests that I want to write, but I think I'm in a position now where I can actually start making use of this code, put it into an end-to-end test, and actually be able to use the Kanban board in Visual Studio Code for real. I'm just going to check that my npm install finished, and it looks pretty good. So where do I start? I'm in the right subdirectory here. So I'm in the React app subdirectory. I can actually run the React app. I'm not entirely sure that it's going to work off the bat. Let's just try this and see what happens, because it's going to be. I need to zoom out a bit because I can't see what's going on here. I'm just going to open this React app in a separate instance of Visual Studio Code. That's a great way to just kind of scope down to it. It's almost like a sub-project in the bigger project. And that way I can look at things like the Webpack config, look at the source files directly like that. Just going to have a look at the package.json and remind myself. Okay, so what I want to run here actually is the Webpack Dev Server. So that's set up to run on the start:dev command, which is this is a standard or like a convention of mine that I use when I want to run something in development mode. So let's try that. npm. Actually, before I do this, I just want to double check. I want to double check that all my tests still run. So I'm running jest here through the npm test script. I'm doing this I just want to make sure that I didn't accidentally leave anything broken in my last session, or if I broke something in between. But I've got 23 passing tests here, so you can see those test suites that we looked at a moment ago. Deserialize a markdown to board data, update board to Markdown AST. So they're all the tests that we looked at a moment ago. That's just to double check. Coming back to a project after not working on it for weeks. Just want to test that that everything is working when I left it last time, because I can't remember. So that's a reason why test-driven development is really good for this kind of thing as well. Is when you're using test-driven development, you can it makes it easy to drop a project for a while, so you can have a break, which is always good, and then pick it up again later and sort of not miss a bat. Okay, so where are we? So I just want to test what state this is in. Like I said, I'm not really sure that this works standalone at the moment. I do want it to work standalone. There's going to be some error here. Oh, it's just something to do with the fav icon. Looks good. Let's just check the code. So this is a JavaScript-based React app. That's why I'm actually looking at this. I've got some test data here, so you can see here in the data.json file. So it's test data for a Kanban board. So I want it to be rendering that data in test mode. I may have to just make a change here somewhere to do that. Where's the render function? Here's the render function. So this is what's producing the UI. I think, okay, here I've got to comment to myself here to remember how to do this. Comment this out to use the test data instead. Let's hope that works. Yeah, cool. So I've got a test board up and running. I've got something I can test with that. Now, so when you're going from, you've got to work, I've got a working program here. I've got something that works the way it was intended. I can test it, I can see that it works here. I want to make a big change to this. I want to make a big structural change. I want to convert this to TypeScript. It's very important for me to check that this is working before I do the conversion. And then I'm going to check, I'm going to use this same test to check that it's working again after I do the conversion. And, fingers crossed I'm not going to run into any hairy problems. So let's just quit that for the moment. Stop the Webpack Dev Server. Okay, so first step in converting to TypeScript. We need to install TypeScript. So if you look in the package.json here, if this was TypeScript, I would expect there to be like TypeScript installed in the dev dependencies here in the package.json file. It's not there obviously because this is not TypeScript yet. So let's install that. So I'm installing a package here. If it was a production package, I'd use the save flag, but I'm going to use save dev to save it as the development dependencies. So what we're going to do for production is we're going to pre-compile this TypeScript code to JavaScript code. So that we're not going to be publishing TypeScript code. We're going to be publishing JavaScript code. So we only need TypeScript during development for our build process. So I'm going to install TypeScript. I'm also going to install the TS loader, which you need to kind of then integrate TypeScript into Webpack. Hopefully this won't take too long. Okay, while that's going, I'll get on with the next bit, which is adding a TS config file. So this is the configuration file for TypeScript. Now I don't know all this format off the top of my head. I do have a sort of a cheat sheet off to the side that I'm looking at to help me remember what I've got to do here. So this is the output directory where TypeScript's going to be compiled to. What am I doing here? Why isn't it completing it? So basically I'm going to allow myself to have implicit any keywords. That helps with the conversion from JavaScript to TypeScript, because otherwise you have to kind of go and add the any key to anywhere, or or you have to go through and properly type everything, which I want to do. I want to do that eventually, but for the moment I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to save myself some time to get this working in the first place. I want to enable source maps. I'm using common.js as my module type. These are pretty much all just sort of default, or mostly default. I'm going to be targeting ES5 JavaScript. These are mostly defaults. Now you have to turn on JSX because this is a React application. TypeScript can handle JSX like JavaScript, HTML and JavaScript. It can handle that for you. You don't need something like Babel to do that if you're using TypeScript. Allow JS is true. So to start with, I'm just going to leave the JavaScript code as JavaScript, and TypeScript will actually deal with that. It will actually compile it for me. So this setup will allow me to do like an incremental conversion. Why doesn't it like that? I spelt it wrong. Oh, I'm missing an I. Okay, there we go. No, I've still spelled it wrong. Let's try this again. No implicit any. Geez, I can't tell what the difference is. No quick fixes available. Oh, there we go. It's caught up. God, that had me confused for a second. It just took a moment for the syntax highlighting or whatever it is there to catch up with me. Okay, let's just see if my npm install is finished. Yep, so if I check my package file now, I should have TypeScript and TS loader. Good stuff. Now, I need to update my Webpack config to be able to load TSX files. I'm going to add a rule here for that. So I'm saying to load TSX files. That's a regular expression, by the way. If you don't recognize that syntax, that's a regular expression in JavaScript. I'm going to use the TS loader to load my TypeScript files. I'm going to exclude anything in node modules. I don't want to compile anything in node modules. Okay, so that might be all I need. I can still load JavaScript files. I am going to strip that out later because I don't really want to support JavaScript files, but I will strip that out in a bit. Actually, you know what? Let's go all the way. Let's go all the way to TypeScript. And I could say something like, you know, or JSX or JS here, and I could have it load. But I'm gonna change all my extensions over to TSX. So that'll do. That'll be enough for that. I'm gonna get rid of Babel and all the Babel related stuff. So let's just clean up this project while we're doing it. This is an npm uninstall. I'll get rid of Babel core, Babel preset environment, Babel preset React. So it really simplifies the project actually adding TypeScript like this, because you get rid of all this Babel stuff. Not that Babel's bad. You know, I quite like Babel for some things, and I've used it, and I do plan to use Babel again in the future. For anyone that isn't aware, Babel is a compiler for JavaScript that can compile modern JavaScript into like a backward compatible older version of JavaScript. So I think that's it. So I'm uninstalling Babel. One thing I need to do after I've done this is I'm going to need to install types for React so that I can compile React. Also, I can have save dev. So I'm doing this because I want to compile, have the compiler basically work with React types. Yep, something like that anyway. So I'm just installing the TypeScript types for React into my project. And hopefully I'm almost there. I'm gonna convert this over to a TSX file. Now let's just see what happens. I'm just going to directly run using npx. I'm going to directly run the TypeScript compiler that's installed in this project. Fingers crossed, everyone. This is crunch time. Oh, I got some errors. That's a good thing. So I want to go back now to Visual Studio Code, and I want to kind of look at these errors in Visual Studio Code. I want to be able to basically do my TypeScript compilation from within Visual Studio Code. To do that, I need to set up a default build task. So if I go Control Shift P to bring up all the actions, and you can see the first one there is configure default build task. That's the first option I get, which is kind of cool. It's kind of anticipated what I want to do. But if it's not there, if it's not the first thing, you can just start typing like build, and it'll like auto match it. So that's what I'm going to do. And now it allows me to choose. I can choose from scripts that are in my package.json. I could choose any of those, but it also gives you the option just for running TypeScript directly. So pretty much I always use, whenever I'm building any TypeScript project in Visual Studio Code, I pretty much always just use tsc:/build. So that creates this tasks.json file. We're going to check that into our code repository in a bit. Won't worry too much about this, but basically this is what's going to run TSC for us. So it's going to do the same thing that I just did from the command line, but it's the default build, so you can get that. I'm not even sure where in the menu you can actually get to that. There we go, run build task. So it's under terminal, run build task. But the reason I had trouble finding that is because I always use the hotkey. So the hotkey is Control-Shift-B. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-B. And it's just almost instantly compiled it using TypeScript. And it gives you a list of the problems. So what am I missing here? Oh, okay, so I'm sure I enabled implicit any. That's really weird. I would have thought that this would just compile and then it would just add the any keyword to this for me. I'm not sure why that's not working, but let's just, for now, given that I don't really understand that, let's just... So I'm basically making these the default kind of JavaScript object type. Well, any in TypeScript means it can be anything, right? It can be an object, a number, an array, anything. It's like a catch-all type. It's not good TypeScript to make excessive use of any, but that's something I'm going to fix later because I can actually get this working. I can go from JavaScript to TypeScript, without making this the most elegant TypeScript. Oh, why doesn't it look like that? So I want to convert over to using the TypeScript versions here. So let's make the props be any and the state be any. Oh, I've got to change some of my imports as well. I'm not sure how many of them I have to change. So imports work slightly differently in TypeScript. Okay, so I've got to the point now where I think I've corrected all the problems that it came up with. Let's run the TypeScript compiler from the command line again just to be sure. So if I have fixed it, it should come up with no errors here. Cool. So now I'm going to try and run this in Webpack. Now, hopefully, let's just double check my Webpack config. I've got my TypeScript loader. I don't need much of anything else. This is a little bit different, this Webpack configuration, to most other Webpack configurations. It's got this plugin down here that basically inlines everything into the HTML file. And that's what seems to be what you need to do to get like a web view working in a Visual Studio Code extension. You can't have a HTML file and separate CSS and JavaScript files. You've got to pack them all together into the same HTML file. So that's what this plugin is doing. There might be other ways to configure a Visual Studio extension so you can do it that way. But this has been the way it's done here. Let's just change this to I'm going to leave that still as inline source JS, and I'm assuming that's working with the built code, not the TypeScript source code. Let's see if I'm correct. So my command was npm run start dev to run the Webpack Dev Server. Fingers crossed. Blank screen. Okay, we're getting some errors. Can't resolve module source. Okay, what's going on here? Give me a moment. I'm just trying to think about what I can do here. Let's go back to this Webpack config file and have a look at him. I mean, the index file hasn't changed, and the index file is still in source. That's what it's supposed to be. Wait, it gets compiled out. It gets compiled out to the dist directory, so that's okay. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just to make sure that there's nothing conflicting here. I'm just going to kill this dist directory. I'm going to rebuild again with TypeScript, and I'm just going to have a look at what the output from the TypeScript looks like. It's going to be a bunch of JSON files in the dist directory. So we look in the dist directory. Under the source directory. So, okay, because it's under the source directory, that's the problem. I've got to change my Webpack config to address that, I think. Oh no, I've got to change my HTML to address that. So I think my HTML, no, so that the code is bundled in line. I wonder what would happen if I just move this code. If I just move this code, now this is a bit of a hack just to test if this is going to work. I'm just going to move this code into the dist directory. I'm going to see if this works. Nothing yet. Blank screen still. Okay, that ain't getting me anywhere. Let's just delete that again. I'm going to have another look at my tsconfig. What do I need to do here? Oh, I'm missing a root directory. That might solve my problem. Let's try. There's more I could put in here. I'm not sure if I need any of that. Let's just try this. Still nothing. Still the same issue. Entry module not found. I'm just going to flesh out my tsconfig a little bit here just to see if there's anything else I need. I'm going to target ES6, I think. and I'll be using the ESX library for sure. I'll probably use other libraries. I'm going to tell it, I don't know, it might default to finding type roots. I'm just going to tell it just in case that they're under node modules at types. I'm going to put in some exclusions of things not to compile. So I don't want to compile anything in node modules. I think I already covered some of this. Did I already cover some of this? Yeah, so I've got an exclude here in my Webpack config. So I don't know if I need this. I want to exclude anything from dist. I think I'm going way too far with this configuration. I honestly don't think I should need all this. Okay, let's just leave it at that for the moment. I don't think this is going to solve my problem anyway. This shouldn't be needed. I'm gonna get rid of this Babel RC file. So we're getting rid of Babel. In the process of that. What else do we need to do? Okay, so one thing I'm going to try is I'm just going to try going back to a JS file just to see. So I've changed that index back to a JS file. I'm now testing for JS files and I'm using the TS loader for them. Let's just see if that makes any difference to this problem. I'm guessing, oh, it's doing something. It's bundling. Come on, you can do it. I mean, the fact that it hasn't failed yet, it makes me think it's going to work. But I don't know why it's taking so long to compile. It's not looking great, is it? It shouldn't be taking this long. I think I've botched something up quite badly. Thanks, Webpack. You're being really helpful. Let's go back to TSX file anyway. Change that to TSX. I'm going to run. I'm just going to compile this again. Going to have a look at the source code, the JavaScript code that it produced. Oh, what's this? For some reason it's complaining about Webpack config, which it shouldn't be trying to compile, but anyway. So now I've got to add DOM to my libs. So it's complaining about accessing a document. So DOM. Let's try that. Cool. It's compiling. Let's have a look at what's in the dist directory here. So actually, I just want to make sure of what I'm getting here again. So let's just again delete this dist directory. Now what do we have? It's all compiled in line. That's cool. That's kind of what I wanted. Got a JS file generated. It's got all the code there that I expect to be there. Is there anything in the HTML file that needs to change? This looks like it should just all work. So let's just clean up on that dist directory again. I'm going to run the Webpack Dev Server again. If this doesn't work, I think I'm going to come back to it in the next live stream. I'm just going to try just doing a normal build. So I think I've got npm run build set up here to run Webpack in production. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it at this for the moment. I think a few problems with this conversion. These things never go perfectly. But rather than you watching me trying to hash through this, figure it out, I'll figure it out offline, and in next week's live stream, I'll come straight back to this, show you what I did to fix it, and then we'll move on with getting this extension, getting the TypeScript code that I want integrated, getting it ready for production, and progressing towards that goal of getting this published on the Visual Studio Code Marketplace. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.